developing countries. We have online volunteers in developed countries. And it's an opportunity to maybe do translations or to do website development or develop a marketing plan, do some graphic work for a pamphlet that an organization is responsible or is looking for assistance with. And each year we give awards to some of the online volunteer work that's done there. Recognition both of the organization and the volunteers. In 2008, there were 5,259 volunteer assignments online. There was almost 4,000 UNV volunteers online. So some of those volunteers were doing more than one assignment. What's also interesting is 70% of our online volunteers are female and 30% male. So again, women who find it difficult to go on-site because they have different commitments, different career curves, or whatever, they can also volunteer online and contribute to peace and development in that way. A couple of other factors I'd like to mention before I open it up to questions is that we have UNV volunteers in 157 different countries and 18 UN peacekeeping missions. 1/3 of the civilian workforce of the Division of Peacekeeping Operations, DPKO, are UNV volunteers. We also mobilize volunteers with the private sector, so employee volunteerism, or what we call corporate volunteerism. In country, to support UNV volunteers, we have country office teams in 88 countries with 90 program officers and 11 program managers. They themselves are UNV volunteers. And we have 80 country office assistants. So once you're in country and are looking for a sense of community, what are other UNV volunteers doing, some support, your living allowance didn't come on time, or you have concerns about the job description or the fulfillment of that job description, there is a country office team, a UNV country office team there to support you. I've talked about the growth. Maybe I'll talk about some of our program focus areas. Our program focus areas include humanitarian and peacekeeping operations, which I've talked a little bit about. That would include humanitarian relief, peacekeeping, post-conflict electoral support, peace building, and early recovery. In the area of delivery of basic services, strengthening local governance, primary health care and responding to HIV and AIDS, and functional literacy are the main areas. In crisis prevention and recovery, disaster risk reduction, early recovery including livelihoods and demining, local conflict resolution, which is in the peace building area, and safeguarding human rights. And a growing area for us is environment and climate change programming, including community-based natural resource management and sustainable biodiversity, community-based adaptation to climate change, and food security through sustainable livelihoods. So I think that might be a bit of an introduction for you, and maybe it's best if I just respond to questions, and then through the questions I'll realize something important I forgot to say.
Let me abuse the prerogative of the chair and ask you to talk a little bit about, you mentioned that there are living allowances provided for UN volunteers and health insurance. Can you talk a little bit about what is provided to a UN volunteer and what is not provided to a UN volunteer for those considering?
Sure. We have conditions of service, and it's explained very clearly to each serving UNV volunteer what you do receive as support. The idea is we don't want you to have to draw on your life savings to be a UNV volunteer. We also don't want to exclude people who may not be able to afford to be a UNV volunteer. So for those two reasons, we provide a living allowance and a housing allowance, which goes directly to the UNV volunteer, which allows you to live comfortably, not extravagantly, but comfortably in the country of assignment. How much you would receive as a UNV volunteer for your living allowance and your housing allowance, of course, depends on the cost of living in that country, and we do surveys quite regularly. You don't get a larger living allowance because you have certain skills. So that's what's different between a paid workforce and a volunteer workforce, because you are, after all, a volunteer. So it doesn't matter that you're bringing 20 years experience and you're a brain surgeon, you're going to get the same living allowance is someone who brings 6 years of experience and is doing some technical training in food processing. Okay? You're going to get the same living allowance. We also provide for security costs while you're in country. That money wouldn't go to you, but would go to the UN agency that you're deployed with, or to go to the UN security system itself. We provide some health insurance, personal insurance for your own, you bring an iPod with you or something like that is really up to you on your own to pay for. But we do offer a program which gives you a 50% reduction on your coverage for your own personal goods when you're in country. The average total package, so the living allowance, the housing allowance, the security, which doesn't go to you, the coverage of the health care benefits that don't go directly to the UNV volunteer, the average cost to a UN agency, because they're the ones funding this, would be about $50,000 a year. And I say about because it's going to differ by country and it's going to differ by the security costs. In high security countries, it goes up as high as about $80,000 to $90,000 a year.
And what about getting to the country if you were interested?
That's included in the $50,000. I'm sorry. Thank you for asking that question, Elizabeth. You would get an economy class return air ticket to the country of assignment. If you're in a very difficult duty station or country of assignment, we call it duty station, and the UN organizations are giving their staff paid rest and recuperation, we ask, but it's voluntary, we ask the UN organization to extend that same rest and recuperation to a UNV volunteer because they're going through they're delivering the same level of skill and service, so why not give them that break that they also need? But it is at this moment voluntary, but many of the UN organizations do that.
So we'll open it up to questions. If you could identify yourself, please.
Serene Caldwell, Global Dreams Consulting, and Daphne. Daphne, I've talked to you on the phone. And
that was you.
I actually just got, I applied a long time ago to be a volunteer, just got to get the field experience. And I just got an email a couple of days ago, and it's asking me if I want to be nominated to go to Afghanistan for 6 months.
Wow.
My question is, and this may apply to other people too, now it says here if you are available, you click on this link, if you're not available for this or any other UNV assignment. So my question is, if you turn down an assignment, do you sort of get off the list? Because I'm not really sure I'm ready and prepared to go to Afghanistan right now.
You see why we have this gender balance issue? I can certainly appreciate that, and there are many different reasons why someone may not be prepared to go to Afghanistan or Philippines, for that matter. No, it's not going to bounce you off. What we want, what we're trying to find out, and we are updating that system to make it a little bit more user-friendly, and so you would have two choices there, is if you're not currently available, or we need to know that because we don't want to then a week later offer you something else or 4 months later offer you something else. So it's just a way for us to add that piece of information to your file in our roster.
I just thought if I said I don't want to go to Afghanistan, if they okay, then
No, you can make that clear in your response. No, make that clear in your response.
Do you know what the situation is there now for your volunteers and how things are there in Afghanistan?
Not any different than for.
I don't think it's any
Okay,
different
so.
for anyone. I was talking to someone who was in Afghanistan, returned a few months back, and it was a woman, and she said that within the constraints they're living in containers, for example, etc. But they're pretty basic, but comfortable, etc. And you're able to move about as long as you remain within the security areas, etc. But they managed to get work done.
Every UNV volunteer, regardless of the country and the security circumstances in that country, will be briefed by UN security upon arrival. And so you would be told exactly how to conduct yourself so that you're as safe as possible. If the security phase, if you know the UN security phases, if the security phase changes, then you would be evacuated if need be, just like other UN staff. And you would be returned when the security phase drops, just like other UN staff.
Can we make sure, Kyle, that the list goes around the back side of the room, the sign-in sheet, please? Oh, did it? Okay. Go ahead.